These are Nebraska corn farmers. They work in acres, not hours, harvesting the energy and climate solutions the world needs. We are proud to stand with you.
The success of tomorrow's soy industry depends on the actions we take today. The future is here, and the time to move is now.
Market Journal, Television for Agricultural Business Decisions, is a presentation of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources in partnership with the Nebraska Rural Radio Association. Promotional support provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine, and partial funding provided by the Nebraska Soybean Board and the Nebraska Corn Board.
Well, hi everyone, I'm Bryce Duskett, and thank you for joining us today on Market Journal. As always, there's been plenty to keep an eye on this week when it comes to agriculture, including white mold in soybeans, which is starting to make its move. We'll hear from Nebraska Extension on why now is the time to take action. Plus, ag safety is not just for adults. Steve White recently attended an Ag Safety Day for youth, and he'll share what he learned. And as always, Eric Hunt, he's standing by with a look at your latest weather forecast. Those stories are coming up, but first, this past Saturday, U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins visited Nebraska at an invitation of U.S. Senator Deb Fischer. That visit included a roundtable discussion with the federal delegation centered on expanding market access for the state's farmers and ranchers. The conversation highlighted ongoing challenges and potential strategies to open new doors for agricultural trade. That visit kicked off at the Klosterman Feedlot Innovation Center based at the Eastern Nebraska Research, Extension, and Education Center near Meade. There, Secretary Rollins was joined by Nebraska Senator Deb Fischer, along with Congressman Don Bacon, Adrian Smith, and Mike Flood. Together, the federal delegation toured the University of Nebraska's newest research facility to see firsthand how this facility is paving the way for world-class research projects.
And again, it's just a real honor to be here, especially here at the University of Nebraska and this resource center. We got to tour some really great facilities earlier today, looking at all of the innovative and groundbreaking research that the University of Nebraska is undertaking right now in partnership, obviously with USDA and other great partners here in Nebraska. We, of course, at USDA work closely with this center to find solutions to the toughest problems facing our farmers and our ranchers. In addition to housing over 6,000 head of livestock for research and teaching, the center offers extension and education programming, seeing firsthand what Nebraska agriculture looks like, what the crown jewel of the University of Nebraska is in the constellation of land-grant stars across our country continues to be just the greatest honor.
Beyond the tour at NREC, the federal delegation, along with the secretary, had the opportunity to meet with several university stakeholders, as well as producer groups, to hold a roundtable discussion that centered around the accomplishments of the Trump administration and some of the current challenges facing America's ag producers.
We just had an incredible roundtable discussing, first of all, some of the incredible wins of the first 200 days of the Trump-Vance administration, but also some of the biggest challenges that our ag community is facing. We are working to usher in a new golden age for America, and for me, that starts with saving our family farms. Food security is national security, and that has become a major, major talking point, but also backed up by policy in Washington and out across the country.
Senator Deb Fischer highlighted the importance of agriculture as the driving force behind the state's economy, as well as the importance of research being conducted at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Extension Centers.
All of us know the importance of agriculture to the state of Nebraska. It is the economic engine of our state. Really pleased to be able to highlight and show the Secretary and show off our land-grant university and the great work that happens at the University of Nebraska. Thankful for the members of different ag groups that joined us today and brought forward some of their thoughts, their concerns. We talked about trade. Obviously, that's so important for Nebraska producers. We're dependent upon trade. We talked about the importance of science-based research and to make sure that agriculture and the tools that producers have available to them are always looked at with regard to science and to know how vital that is for our ag producers.
Secretary Rollins also teased some new USDA initiatives that are expected to be announced in the coming weeks, so keep your ear on the ground for those updates. That event also wrapped up with a bit of a lighthearted moment as the Secretary announced she'd be heading straight for Iowa following her Nebraska stop. That comment drew some good-natured criticism from the onlookers and the press corps. But don't worry, Madam Secretary, we won't hold that trip against you there to the Hawkeye states. We move along now. As I mentioned earlier, it's never too early to start teaching kids about agricultural safety. One program that makes a big difference is the Progressive Agricultural Safety Day, the largest rural safety and health education program for children in North America. Designed for kids 4 to 13, that event offers hands-on, age-appropriate lessons that stick with them long after that day is over. Steve White had the chance to see that program in action.
30 years of life-saving lessons. Progressive Ag Safety Days have been making a difference since 1995. And here in Valley County, they've been on board since nearly the start.
So this is actually what's going to be shredding up the grass, weeds, or whatever you're going over here.
We know not to put our hands and feet near spinning blades, but kids need to learn, especially those in rural communities with unique hazards. Empowering kids to be safe is the mission of Progressive Agriculture Safety Day. Kiddos may think mom and dad's ATV looks like a kid-friendly vehicle, but it's no toy.
Anybody can hop on them. You know, a motorcycle, you have to have a little bit of skill to keep it upright. With these, just about anybody can ride on top of them.
That's Aaron Yoder, a professor at both the University of Nebraska Medical Center and University of Nebraska-Lincoln. He specializes in agricultural safety and says ATVs have surpassed tractors for the number of injuries. It's why his son puts on a helmet.
I told him really the safest one's the one that you'll wear.
Even a bike helmet's better than nothing because rollovers can put 1,000 pounds on top of the rider, as a special rig shows how they can be tough to control.
See, as I tilt the machine, he needs to move his body around to keep it stable.
We've had some ATV accidents in our area, and if we can help youth be safe by educating them, I'd really like to do that because I know there are youth driving ATVs in our area.
And probably at a young age even.
Definitely, yes.
Extension educator Kayla Henricks coordinates Progressive Agriculture Safety Day in Valley County, serving around 200 kids every year. The nationwide program is celebrating 30 years in 2025, and Kayla has been on board from nearly the start.
I'm pretty sure this is like our 28th or 29th year.
So almost from the beginning.
Yes.
Federal data shows agriculture remains among the most dangerous industries, and studies have shown a high percentage of those injured are youth.
If we can save a life by teaching safety education, it is well worth it.
Henricks covers some topics every year, like basic tractor safety. The State Patrol joins her with a visual on the importance of seatbelts, but she also covers mental health and emergency preparedness.
Try and prevent them, but also know what to do if something happens.
Progressive Ag Safety has grown into the largest rural safety program in the nation, reaching millions. Valley County has served thousands, and Henricks says the impact extends to the whole family.
Their parents will say, I took my child to safety day and I was told how to do something differently as a result of what the kids learned. So not only are we teaching the youth, we're also teaching the parents.
Thanks to community support, kids go home every year with something they can use. It might be a helmet, life jacket, or first aid kit. Retired ag teacher Gene Ray is part of the organizing committee, convinced it has made a difference.
How do you measure the accident that you prevented? If you prevent an accident, it doesn't happen. And that's our goal, is to prevent accidents.
As the program celebrates 30 years, and Valley County almost all of those, Kayla Henricks just wrapped up service on the national board. Because of her belief, it saves lives.
Truly, that is why we do it. And we sure hope that it has made a difference in people's lives.
Hendrick said after 3 decades, the national program continues to assess how to better serve people, and that includes new outreach efforts to schools and rural communities. With another stop down the white line, I'm Steve White.
Thanks for that story, Steve. We appreciate it. Up next here on Market Journal, it's our chance to dive deep into the markets. Joining us on the desk this week is Jeff Peterson. He is the president of Heartland Farm Partners. Jeff, good to see you.
You bet. Always great to be here, Bryce.
You chose a good week. We've got a lot of things to talk about that are impacting the grain markets. Probably the biggest thing this week has to do with the crop report that came out on Tuesday from USDA. Several different storylines involved there, but the big one, monster corn crop is expected, as reported by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They projected the yield for corn, 188 bushels per acre nationwide, and some change. Was that the biggest surprise?
Well, no, actually, I don't think that was the biggest surprise. That was a big number and actually way above what we expected. If we go back and look at history, this is a good-looking crop. If you look at it on the condition side, it's not the best crop we had. Probably one of the best rated we had was back in 2016. When we look at the plant health, though, it's off the charts. And so as we dig in and we say, okay, so how did they come up with that yield? First of all, well, as we get into August, we hand the baton basically from the World Ag Outlook Board over to NASS. NASS sent out their 15,000 surveys roughly to the farmers towards the end of July, first few days of August, asked them what do they think the yield is. They also then study the plant health data, and then they take a little look at what's going on with crop conditions. As they pulled all that together, it brought that yield up over 188 bushels. But in the past, 2016, we saw a similar type increase, so I'd say that probably wasn't too big of a surprise. But ultimately, the big surprise would have been the acreage change. And as you dig into the acres and you look at that, we see an acre increase. We end up having over, I think, 2.1 million acres more, and that's a lot of acres. And as we dig into that, we say, how in the world did that happen? Because if you look back, there was good surveys done by NASS for planting intentions in March, planted acreage in June. Well, they incorporated the FSA data. So had we have just ended up having basically that increase in yield, I think the market would have handled it okay. But then when we throw in that big increase in acres, that really threw the market a curveball.
For corn specifically, let's talk about how the market has reacted since that information was released on Tuesday. You and I visiting here Thursday morning.
Yeah, we've continued to see some pressure put on that market. As you think about it, when the market ended up having our big pullback on Tuesday, we pull back down, we come back in, we set some new lows for the move here. Overall, though, I think that trade that day actually handled that pretty well. I was concerned at one point when we saw the information come out, we might actually go close to a limit move, but it didn't. And then we saw a little bit of recovery, as we came into yesterday a little bit, or so that that helped a little bit. So, but some of that strength came because of the strength we've seen in soybeans. So everything we've talked about on the corn side, really we saw just the opposite over there on the soybean side.
All right. Also impacted the soybean market just as we began the week, the overnight session Sunday night into Monday morning. The president put a tweet out, and I'll paraphrase a little bit here, saying that China needed to buy a lot of soybeans. Anything that indicated that we'd see some follow-through commitments because of that tweet, or whichever social media platform I guess he put that out on, Jeff?
No, actually we didn't see anything of it. And as a matter of fact, in the weekly export sales numbers we ended up seeing, we didn't see anything come in that would have resembled any type of purchase from China. So China officially for the 2025 crop year, that's the one that they have already planted. And this is, that crop year starts on September 1st of 2025 and goes through August 31st of 2026. Officially, we do not have anything on the books for China. And what we know is that as of right now, the trade truce has just been delayed. They put another 90-day delay on that. And actually some additional information did come out from Scott Bessent that said, well, we might not be talking to him for a couple months here yet. Now, I think there's still communication going on, but we don't appear to be any closer to a solution there.
Yep. All right. Well, there's a lot of factors to continue to watch, and that includes next week, Pro Farmer Tour. We'll be making a pit stop through Nebraska, estimating the yields out in the fields. What will you be watching from that tour?
Yeah, you know what? The Pro Farmer Tour ultimately is very important this year. And ever since you think back on the change that happened on how NASS does their yields for the August report. It used to be, prior to 2019, they would have actually set up their in-field observations and their plots in the August. That doesn't happen now till September. So that's elevated the importance of the Pro Farmer Tour because now you've got a large scale, large sampling all across the major corn and soybean producing areas that are going to physically give us a chance for them to get in the fields and take a look. things that we're going to be looking for, starting first on corn, we really are going to be looking at, okay, how do the stand counts look? What do the ear counts look like? Then as they start peeling back some of the ears, what we know they'll do is that they will count the rows around, they will measure the length. So you think about what they do is they take the number of ears, they take that times the rows, times the length in inches, divide by the inches, and that's going to give us linear inches. Divide that over with what we got in our row spacing, you get a yield. We're going to see whether or not the potential of that crop holds up. What we know is we won't see anything in regard to what the kernel fill is, but at least gives us an idea of kind of what the potential is. Big thing we're watching on soybeans though is what do those pod counts look like? Because they'll go out in the field, they'll physically look at 3 feet of basically row, they'll count off how many pods. Now the only thing is, it's a lot about potential of that crop because they're going to be counting pods all the way down. If they're over a 1/4 inch long or bigger, they will count those pods. Now they won't look at how the fill is. They will report a little bit about what the field conditions are, dry, whether it's dry or wet. They aren't going to count the number of berries in each pod, but at least it gives us an idea of what the potential is.
All right. Well, let's wrap up our conversation here, Jeff, and talk about what decisions our viewers, producers should be making based on the information we have at our discretion right now. Not a fun time. We've got great crops, but not good markets to sell those crops into. What kind of advice are you sharing with producers?
Yeah, so let's just kind of dig into it. A few things we know. We know as we get into gut slot harvest, right in amongst that, we know we're going to have some wide basis levels. So if you've got bushels that are going to have to move into town at harvest and they're going to have to be sold, I'd recommend getting some basis locked up. If you physically have got your hedged arrives or you've got hedges on, you haven't rolled those yet, I'd wait a little bit yet. I think we'll see a little bit bigger carry yet, and then you can roll those on out the deferred months. I think we'll see some improvement in basis afterwards. And then if you haven't sold enough on the bean side, I'd be making some new crop bean sales here.
Appreciate Jeff coming into the studio to have that discussion with us. A lot of different factors impacting the grain markets right now. Well, property tax relief remains an elusive goal for the Nebraska legislature. Although little along those lines was accomplished this spring in the unicameral, there were still a number of issues impacting farmers that were tackled legislatively. That included a ban on cultured protein or so-called fake meat products, a law that added self-propelled fertilizer equipment and hay grinders without cargo to the list of vehicles that are not required to comply with the Motor Vehicle Certification Title Act, as well as the merger of the Nebraska Department of Natural Resources and the Nebraska Department of Environment and Energy. They created a new agency between the two. You can learn more about the latest happenings when it comes to agriculture in the unicameral in the August issue of the Nebraska Farmer. Up next, it is time for weather with Nebraska Extension's Eric Hunt. Eric, last weekend brought some wild weather, including a storm near Blair that picked up wind speeds at 140 miles per hour. Definitely not your average summer storm. What's in your outlook, though, when we turn to the next 7 days?
Well, thanks, Bryce. I spent most of last Saturday cleaning up that wild weather we had here in Lincoln. Thankfully, nothing quite like that in the forecast of next week. What we do have coming up, though, is a special field day on Monday, August 25th from 10 to noon. Fillmore County. Jordan Oldrick will be talking about the economic benefits of regenerative practices, as well as alternative managements to weed control and things like that. This will occur half a mile east of 1606 County Road J in Geneva. My understanding is there's going to be prime rib at Milligan's Pub afterward. It's going to be hot this weekend. It will remain hot on Sunday with highs in the 90 statewide, possibly flirting with 100 degrees here across portions of southwestern Nebraska. Likely remaining hot across most state on Monday, maybe cooling off a little bit here across portions of north central, northeastern Nebraska, but likely remaining at or near heat advisory criteria for portions of south central and southeastern Nebraska. So through the week, though, this ridge that's going to be prominent across the central United States this week, it will start to retrograde toward the west. That'll put more of our area in northwest flow. It looks like we have at least a somewhat potent shortwave coming in through the northern plains at western Corn Belts into Monday night into Tuesday. That will lead to more rising motion. I think there's going to be a reasonably good chance of showers and storms, certainly along and east of Highway 281, later Monday into early Tuesday. Now, right now, the Water Prediction Center is not particularly bullish on much rain falling from this, but I do think we'll have to watch out for the potential for severe weather and it's possible, for more rainfall than what's currently being projected early this next week. So we head through the middle later portion of the week. There's going to be additional chance of showers and storms, particularly across portions of central Nebraska. But this looks to be probably one of the drier weeks we've had across the state in quite a while. But it has been a very wet summer, so maybe just a little bit more of a typical summer week coming up for us. In terms of temperatures, likely remaining relatively warm most of the week across the western portion of the state. Probably at or just slightly above average most of the week here across central Nebraska. I think as we head into the eastern portion of the state, Wednesday through Friday should see somewhat average, maybe slightly below average temperatures, at least for high temperatures, probably being at or maybe slightly above for lows. So getting a little bit of reprieve from the heat later in the week here across eastern Nebraska, not getting much of a break here across western portions of the state, unfortunately. CPC shows warm being favored here through the period ending August 27th. More troughing further east expected next weekend, so probably going to remain relatively cool Great Lakes into the northeast. CPC does show better chances of above average precipitation here across the High Plains region, including most of Nebraska as we head through this period. And looking a little bit deeper in the crystal ball, as we head through about August 25th, there is some signal we may get a deeper trough coming into the Pacific Northwest and get some somewhat potent shortwaves coming out ahead of it into the Central Plains. If that happens, that's definitely going to open up the possibility for getting showers of thunderstorms across the entire state into the region as we head toward about August 25th and 26th. Speaking of precipitation, we did have a lot of precipitation across portions of south central and into eastern Nebraska this last Friday night and through Sunday mornings. That's good news for the drought monitors as we keep kind of chipping away at drought here across the state. We're now under 25% statewide in drought, just pockets of southwestern and the panhandle still in severe drought. Bad news is that came at the expense of a lot of wind damage. So Saturday morning we had wind damage from Clay Center up through Blair, and then on Saturday night we had wind damage from Webster County over into Jefferson County. In terms of rangeland conditions, again, things are a lot better than they were a year ago, but we still have pockets of stressed pastures across the High Plains, including Nebraska. About 25% of our pastures across the state are still considered in poor to very poor conditions. And this is the temperature and precipitation roundup for the week ending August 9th, 2025. Back to you, Bryce.
Thanks for that update, Eric. We appreciate it. Finally today, Nebraska extension plant pathologists say conditions are right this year for white mold in soybeans. Fields with a history of that disease are at even greater risk. Market Journal's Bill Dodd caught up with an extension plant pathologist to talk about white mold pressure this season and what steps you can take to protect your yield right now.
Yeah, we've had bad seasons of white mold in Nebraska in 2021, 2023, and then it looks like we're set up for record season here in 2025. There's a couple reasons for that. This disease stays in Nebraska, it overwinters in Nebraska, and it'll stay in those specific fields where you've had it. Once it's in there, if you put beans in that field, it's going to grow white mold. It's really hard to rotate away from that. And it happens to be the same odd year soybean fields that have built up really high levels of the disease. Another big driver of disease is weather, and we've had consistent moisture, which really feeds this cycle. This is basically a structure that has a mushroom. It's a pathogen that grows a mushroom-like structure, much like a lot of other things. And moisture is what feeds that. If you go out in your yard in the morning and you see mushrooms growing, same thing, it had that moisture that got it going. They also need cool temperatures, and that's something we really haven't experienced widely in the last couple years. But this year we're getting, again, cycles where we've had cool 70, low 80 degree days. We've had some nights in the upper 50s. So getting down there, that's going to cool off the soil and keep that soil surface cool, which will feed this disease even more. So when you're looking for white mold infection in a field, the first thing I like to do is start by looking across that canopy for any wilted areas or patches. Now it's been wet here, so we're not going to see any of that today. But the next thing you can do is you can go through your rows and you can pull the canopy back. Now the white mold's going to infect lower down on the plant where the spores are more likely to land through flowers. In this case, if it did infect, you'd see a senescing flower, a dying flower, and then the stem would start to bleach and turn sort of the color of a paper bag and spread up and down that stem. Initially, you'd just see some of that, and as the disease develops, you'll start to see that white fungal growth on the stem and ultimately those black survival structures there. Now, if you're earlier in the season and you want to go and look for white mold, you could look for those survival structures on the soil surface. They're typically darker than the soil. And also you can look for the mushrooms. Now the mushrooms are very small, but if you look closely, you could potentially see them. And here's just some mushrooms in a vial that show what those might look like. The thing I want you to notice here is just how small these are. They do grow in a cluster, so they might look to be about the size of a quarter, but in most cases, they're going to be so small that you just don't see them unless you're looking very closely. But if you do want to look, you can make it easier on yourself by starting near an area that had a history of the disease, because it typically doesn't move from year to year. If if you'd like to manage this, you're really coming down to the wire on what you can do. The optimal time for an initial application of a foliar fungicide would have been late R1, early R2. That's a good initial timing. The plants are susceptible during flowering. There are still some flowers out there. If you're an R3 still, maybe early R4, you could potentially have a chance to have an economical impact from a foliar fungicide, but the longer you wait, the lower your chance of having that product pay off are gonna be. There's other things you can do outside of the season. You can plant varieties that have good white mold ratings. You can think about your row spacing. Wider rows are gonna canopy later and be a little bit drier and a little bit less humid. That's gonna drive that disease down. There's also products coming on the market like biologicals. They're rapidly entering the market space, and we just haven't had the time to test them like we've had to build up data on fungicides. But we're currently doing research characterizing those biological products for how well they work against white mold in Nebraska, and we're pooling that with data across the country. So through the Crop Protection Network, we should have a lot of data soon on how well those work. Additionally, there's some alternatives. Think about things that might open up your canopy, triggering plant defenses, nutrition, manganese, making sure you have appropriate levels. All of those things are really going to go into working on this pathogen. And it's such a problem that really focusing on multiple fronts is going to be the most effective thing you can do to control this disease.
Thanks to Dylan for his time and expertise on this topic. If you'd like to learn more, perhaps you're facing that challenge in your fields, head on over to the website cropwatch.unl.edu. Before we wrap up this week's show, I want to let you know of an upcoming event that you might be interested in. It's the 3rd annual Nebraska Agriculture and Spray Drone Conference. It's set for August 22nd at the Lifelong Learning Center in Norfolk. That event will feature 24 experts from across Nebraska, the U.S., and truly around the world, covering cutting-edge drone technology and agriculture. Certified crop advisors and agronomists can earn credit for attending that conference. Then on August 23rd, participants can take in a mapping drone bootcamp masterclass at the Madison County Extension Office. If you can't attend that in-person event, there's also an online option available. To register and learn more, visit the website go.unl.edu/drone-conference. And want to let you know, if you did miss one of our stories, you can catch up with Market Journal anytime on YouTube or connect with our team on social media. We hope to see you right back with us next time. But until then, I'm Bryce Duskett, wishing you a safe and productive week.
Join Market Journal online at marketjournal.unl.edu. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine. Market Journal is produced by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources.